Alright guys, so today's video is, now I'm not going to consider this a tool review. It's kind of in the middle of a tool review and a tech tip, because I have pretty much replaced everything on this cabinet from Harbor Freight over the years. So here we go. Alright guys, today we have my Harbor Freight sandblasting cabinet. It's probably one of the most popular do-it-yourself things to get. Obviously you'll need an air compressor. I've modified mine over the years. You can see mine's got quite a bit of modifications to it. I still am using the original nozzle that came with it. What I've done so far is built a little platform for it to wheel it around. You'll see I have this monstrosity. That is a bucket head vac and a YouTube derived a vortice dust collector. Kind of a do-it-yourself deal with a bunch of PVC and Home Depot buckets. I will post the link to this in the, now I've modified mine slightly, but I will put the link to the guy's video in the description down below. So that basically, you turn the vacuum on, it creates negative pressure over here and it sucks everything out of your blast chamber, pulling fresh air in through. There's a little deal back here you gotta take off. Can't even see it. So I gotta take that off. A little cramped for space. I got crap everywhere. I need to use this today. The light that comes with these things is junk. I hardwired, just again, some Home Depot stuff. I just hardwired a plug-in light. We'll get to the silicone here in a minute. So this, you can kind of tell my blaster cabinet has seen some new iterations over the years. Basically, it is completely siliconed together at this point. I mean, I've used the hardware, but it's still, you can see all the silicone everywhere. I highly recommend that. It doesn't need to be pretty at all. It just needs to work. I've got a dryer set up. I don't even remember. This is a regulator I got from somewhere. I don't remember. This is a dryer I got from Tractor Supply. Obviously there's no air to it. I've got a quick connect that I just need to get this hose and plug it in. I had bought this back in like 2012 and used it right out of the box with what I had. I just used our shop vac, hooked straight to it. And it wasn't mine, so yeah, whatever. I was using that black titanium dioxide stuff or whatever it's called, and that did amazing work, but probably not the best to breathe in. Again, this thing wasn't sealed that great from the factory, but I kind of rushed putting it together because I wanted to finish a project. So I'll put some pictures up of the results of that way back then. I got rid of the old titanium stuff and we're going to just use crushed walnut. We're going to see how that works on pretty much, well, it should cast iron is what we're going to be blasting today. But we'll see how this walnut does. Another modification I've done is on the pickup. On the pickup sides of things, I drilled some extra holes. I drilled some extra holes to allow the material, the blasting material, to fall into this cavity and get picked up a little easier. As you can see, that just goes down down towards the bottom right there. This is something I rigged up, and believe it or not, this is not actually the same thread. This is a regular brass fitting MPT that just happens to almost fit in here. I believe this is a SAE and then this is metric. It's very close, but like 3 or 4 threads, it goes in enough and you can coop it. It'll be fine for something like this. Yeah, so this comes with these things on it, and it just has a regular hose with a clamp. Yeah, I mean, it works, but like I said, it's not the same thread. When you pull these out, this is, I believe, metric, and this is the other side. This is what would be down here. Same thing. I don't even remember what's on this side, to be honest with you. But again, this has all just been customized with your standard brass fittings you can get pretty much anywhere, including Harbor Freight. But you can see this is not the same thread, but it's very close. I should really buy a more professional nozzle setup. I mean, the cabinet's already here. The cabinet, it just needs to do what it does. It just needs to sit here and be sealed. So I'm just using what I got on a budget. And it's always good to throw a zip tie around this too, just in case. There she is. It's always kind of a pain to get all the sediment to stay on this side. But all right, guys, so we've got a head pressure at about 140 psi. We've got our line pressure sits in 90. On the blaster cabinet, we're going to set that to about 50 psi just to see what that does with this walnut. And of course, we have a little air dryer. Purge a little. We'll be cleaning off this caliper carrier. Obviously, you know, when you're using a blasting cabinet, this is your slider pins. These slider pins have a little rubber boot around them. We'll just be really careful. I have new ones coming anyway, so we'll leave them on here for now to protect the bore, because you don't want the bores of these getting crap down in there. Then you got to clean everything. It's best just to leave these in place. It's not going to hurt anything, especially because we're using walnut. Like I said, I'll just be careful when I get close to it. Again, a lot of guys will want to just completely dismantle these and dunk them, let them sit overnight in a solvent bath or something. But there's multiple ways to clean these up. We're leaving the hardware in just to protect the threads. Again, we're not dealing with a fine enough material where you really have to worry about that stuff getting in the threads. Like if you're using certain types of sand or the titanium stuff or soda that's got an abrasive grit in it, I mean, that stuff will get stuck in the threads. You won't realize it, and you'll go to put your bolts in there and it'll seize, and then you'll try to cut it down, it'll pull the threads. It's a mess depending on what media you're using in your blast cabinet. I've had very annoying situations in the past, so this is why I'm actually using walnut for the first time. Just going to see how this goes. This thing's kind of loud, so bear with me. Alright guys, that's kind of a before and after. Didn't get too crazy with it. That's crushed walnut on cast iron. Not too bad. Again, I mean, you can achieve a similar to same result using a wire brush and some brake clean and what have you, but it's a little easier to just plop it in the chamber and just blast away at it. It gets into every little nook and cranny. Again, the crushed walnut, this is actually my first time using it as a blast media. I guess I don't want to say I'm not that impressed with it. I mean, it got it back down to raw metal, which is what you want. It's a very coarse media, and I guess I'm used to using medium to fine media, which gets this like shiny and new. But I mean, you can see the difference right away. I'm really just prepping these for paint, so made a big old mess. Yeah, it works. It does what it's supposed to, but I may be getting a more of a finer media, because like this, my little tumbler, there's glass in here. It's pretty much what you use on smaller like nuts and bolts and whatever. I haven't used this in a while, but it's awesome. Kind of just leave it on overnight, and next day your parts come out looking brand new. Alright guys, you can see another big difference. Obviously I don't have this caliper unloaded yet, but alright guys, and here is the caliper cleaned up compared to an old one. It doesn't look that different. Obviously that one's still a little wet from the brake clean, or the brake fluid, but kind of see the crushed walnut. Just got all the junk off. Of course, this one's yet to be cleaned. But we'll get to it here in just a second. Alright guys, up next we've got an old valve cover. It's not been cleaned. It's still a little bit oily. This isn't something you would want to necessarily put in a media blasting cabinet to clean with it wet. This is something you'd want to leave in a tank overnight, or just brake clean it, and then it has to be completely dry really before you put it in there. Again, the blasting cabinet would be great to get all this little gunk out of all these little crevices and everything that you can't get to with just a regular brush, depending on how crazy you get with the detail. But something like this with all these little nooks and crannies would be perfect to use in a media blaster. But again, it would have to be relatively dry, because you don't want to contaminate the media, because it'll clump up and then it'll make it harder for the tube to pick it up. So, but just for fun, we're just going to throw this in here. I mean, you can see most of this relatively, it's not wet, but it's, you know, you'll get the picture. We're just going to do a little spot to see how clean walnut shell gets it. I'm a little curious myself. And then this is just a steel backing plate to a vacuum pump. You can see it's relatively dry. I just want to see how clean it can get it. It's all this crud's fairly embedded. So steel, aluminum, those caliper brackets are cast iron. So we'll just see what the walnut shell does at about 80 psi on our setup. Well, that was to be expected. It pretty much just kind of made it a little shinier. Again, and that's because of the media and the pressures we're using. I mean, there's that's laser etched, and I don't really know necessarily what that crud is. It isn't oil. I think it's just kind of some kind of corrosion. But again, that's walnut shell at 80 psi on a piece of steel with some laser etching. Obviously, it didn't do much. I didn't expect a whole lot. But like I said, you can get some media that even at that same PSI will just eat right through. Maybe a little higher, maybe at 100 PSI, you can get some stuff that will pretty much take that laser etching off, more or less. So this is where a media blaster cabinet shines. Again, you saw I just very briefly, without really even paying much attention, just kind of went in there and cleaned this area. Again, really, I did not take very much time or attention to detail on it, but you can see where it shines with being able to get all that little embedded crap out of there on just a quick glance over with a gun. Obviously, something like that, we would just get in there and clean that out a little bit better, go back in there and blast it some more. You already know this. You want to be very wary of your mating surfaces for whatever you've got hooked up to this thing, and all of your threads. Walnut shell is really not going to mess with threads any. Anything finer than that probably will. You can see how time-saving a cabinet would be if you want to get really detailed on a piece like this. Now again, this is just an example. I didn't clean this prior. Literally all the walnut shell that's sticking to it is because it's still kind of damp and sticky from oil. You would want to have this in a solvent tank overnight, or at least, you know, because not everybody's got a hot tank, you know, or a $3,000 rotisserie in their garage. And, you know, it's on a do-it-yourself level. You do your best to clean this by hand, make sure it's completely dry, put it in there, and that's when your investment will shine and pay off, make you feel good. But again, this is a junk piece anyway. The journals are ground out of it, but just showing you, this is aluminum, 80 psi walnut shell on aluminum. So, and then you can get in there and polish it if you want to with your Dremel rotary tools or whatever you're going to use. And guys, I think one of the most important parts of this whole operation is what you don't see. We're not seeing any dust, fog, or mist floating around. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but it's a nice sunny day, and you could tell right away if there was a haze in here, and there's not. So again, that's a good dust collection system. So chances are, if you're looking at one of these already, you've got an idea in mind of what you're going to use it for. So obviously make sure you've got the right media lined up that you want to use. But, you know, I guess the question is, do I recommend this to an avid do-it-yourself or even to a shop just looking for something like this? Absolutely. Again, out of the box, there's not a lot. It doesn't have a lot going for it out of the box, because if you look at any other reviews, it does not come with a lot. Do you need all this to make it work effectively? Yes. You can just use a shop vac that you don't care much about. If you want to buy a $30, $40 one and use it as a, you know, as a consumable, that's fine. Again, if you do buy this on the way home, swing by a hardware store and get a larger tube of silicone. I'm telling you, just go crazy on it. Yeah, it's not pretty, and it doesn't have to look pretty. Gloves are great. These are still original. I've used this thing a ton of times. I don't think the gloves have great reviews, but I've not had any issues with them. I don't know. Maybe I just got lucky. So again, I know this is kind of an all over the place review, and this may or may not be helpful to you, period, because I've done so many modifications to this thing. But I guess the point of the video is just go ahead and buy one if you want it. Like I said, I don't have any real complaints. I mean, you're buying the cheapest blasting cabinet on the market, so don't expect too much. Well, guys, thanks for watching. I hope this helped somebody, or at least entertained somebody.